Your Excellency, Levan Isoria, Minister of Defense, Peter Hultqvist, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon and welcome to Folkförsvar's seminar about Swedish-Georgian defense partnership. My name is Fredrik Miller Hansen and I work as an education and program manager here at Folkförsvar. And I will be the moderator here today. Folkförsvar is of course very happy to welcome Mr. Levan Isoria and the Defense Minister of Georgia and Mr. Peter Hultqvist, the Swedish Minister of Defense, to this seminar. This is the first time a Georgian Minister of Defense visits Sweden, which of course makes this seminar even more special. Today our focus would be on the Swedish-Georgian relationship, but also of course on the Georgian defense and security policy priorities. The Georgian defense reform appears to proceed rather rapidly, and it's an ambitious agenda with assistance from both NATO and various partner countries. And the Georgia-NATO relationship dates back to 1994, when Georgia joined the NATO Partnership for Peace program. But there is no membership action plan as of yet, although the idea of Georgia joining NATO has broad support among the Georgian public. And then there's the relationship with the European Union. In June 2014, Georgia signed the association agreement with the European Union, and in a second agreement governing the country's involvement in the EU crisis management operations was also signed. Membership in the European Union is welcomed by the Georgians, with 77% of the population approving the goal to join the European Union and only 11% opposing it, although those numbers are from an opinion poll from 2014. Georgia is a priority country within the Eastern Partnership Initiative and the wider European neighborhood policy launched in 2004, with the objective of bringing the enlarged EU and its neighbors closer to each other. However, there's currently not a fixed date for bidding for a EU membership. So given all this, what are the foreign and security priorities of Georgia? What are the current status of membership in both NATO and the European Union? And in what ways are Georgia contributing to common Euro-Atlantic security? These are some of the questions that we hope we will be able to discuss here today. So once again, Defense Minister Isoria, a warm welcome to Sweden and to this seminar. Our first speaker will be Defense Minister Peter Hultqvist, and when he is finished, we will listen to Minister Levan Isoria, and we will end this seminar with a Q&A session with both ministers. I would also like to point out that this seminar is live streamed via our webpage and our YouTube channel. That means that when we have the Q&A session, you have to wait for a microphone. And also, please make sure that your mobile phones are in silent mode. But without further ado, Minister Hultqvist, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to welcome my Georgian colleagues, Levan Isoria and Deputy Minister Lela Shikovani and Chief of Defense Vladimir Shachibaya. Is that correct? You are warmly welcome, and I really appreciate our meeting today here. This is the first visit ever by a Georgian defense minister to Sweden, and that makes the situation a little bit more interesting. I think it's important to show our country for the Georgian guests here, and also discuss about our defense decisions and the Swedish strategy towards the situation we just now have around us. And it's also important for me and for my government to show very direct and clear support for a country that has been a victim to Russian aggression. That's very important. The conflict with Russia took place 2008, and still today almost 20% of Georgian territory are occupied. And I think that is something also we have to think about. The many lives lost and the placement of families in conflict concerning Abkhazia and South Ossetia is a tragedy of many levels. Sweden's supports Georgia's territorial integrity within its international recognized borders. We are second largest staff contributor to a European monitoring mission, which monitors the situation. Minister Isoria have discussed the bilateral cooperation between our countries. We both live in regions that have a complicated security environment. The Baltic Sea and the Black Sea regions both share the challenge from a more assertive and more aggressive Russia. Our bilateral cooperation dates back to 2010. Today we focus on exchange between military engineers units, but also mountain training for Swedish soldiers in Georgia. We fully support Georgia's right to decide its own future and foreign policy course free from outside interference. It's a cornerstone of the European security order, and it's also a cornerstone of international law. Georgia, together with Sweden, Finland, Jordan, and Australia, is part of the NATO Enhanced Opportunity Programme. And that's also a reason for us to meet here in Stockholm today and also to cooperate in the future. Starting from the next month, Sweden will contribute one instructor to NATO Joint Training and Evaluation Center in Georgia. I see that as an important symbol for our support to the build of independent Georgian capabilities. Once more, it's a great pleasure to welcome my Georgian colleagues here. And the Minister Isoria will now present his view of Georgian security and defense policy. You are warmly welcome.
Thank you very much, Minister Hultqvist. Yeah, please use this one. I would like to introduce Minister of Defense, Levin Isoria. He became Georgia's Minister of Defense on August 1st, 2016. Before that, he obtained a PhD in law from the University of Göttingen in 2002. In 2012, he became the Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs and served in that capacity to 2015 when he was appointed Deputy Head of Georgia's State Security Services. And now he is here as a capacity of Minister of Defense. You're most welcome, and we are interested to hear what you have to say.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored today to have the opportunity to address you. Firstly, I would like to thank Mr. Hultqvist for the warm welcome and speech he gave us today. I would also like to express my appreciation to my Swedish colleague for your permanent support of Georgia's territorial integrity and sovereignty, and the active role Sweden plays in the process of the Eastern Partnership Initiative, which is an essential tool for Georgia's Euro-Atlantic integration. Global security environment and importantly, the Euro-Atlantic security environment have changed dramatically. Principles of rule-based international order have been violated and the European security architecture has been threatened. Ukrainian crisis has clearly demonstrated that Moscow is resorting to the methods of hybrid warfare by increasingly using hybrid instruments. The transforming nature of the threats and challenges, their hybrid, complex, and dynamic character makes the security environment even more difficult and pushes us all to seek effective solutions. As a result of Georgian government's consistent policy, the renewal of the hostilities over Georgia's occupied territories seems less likely, but some conflicts in the region still remain more vulnerable to the possible escalation. There is no doubt that another outbreak of conflict in the region will further deteriorate the security environment of the Black Sea and have negative impact on the whole Euro-Atlantic community. Unresolved territorial disputes in the Caucasus further complicate the security environment in the region and make regional states more vulnerable to the outside pressures and aggression. It is not in Moscow's interest to achieve long-term solutions of these conflicts, as they are effective mechanisms to influence foreign and domestic policies of the affected countries. The Russian military presence in Georgia's occupied regions has dramatically increased since 2008. Russia's invasion and occupation of Georgia's territories in 2008, followed by its illegal annexation of Crimea and destabilization of eastern Ukraine, have deteriorated the whole Black security environment. In the context of enhancing security environment, we believe it is critical that NATO increases its engagement and visibility in the region. Regional countries emphasize their Euro-Atlantic aspirations and send the strong signal that in the 21st century it is not acceptable and impossible to re-establish the spheres of influence. There is an arc of insecurity and instability along NATO's periphery and beyond. In this situation, we all feel threatened, but some states are more threatened than others, and they face a more direct threat, and of those some are allies, while others are partners. In order to strengthen their deterrence and defense capabilities, NATO is focused on modern deterrence strategy, which extends beyond its borders to support partners and help them to defend themselves. For this reason, NATO has provided enhanced forward presence in the eastern part of the alliance. NATO's strategic focus is shifting towards alliance eastern flank and the Baltic and Black Sea regions. This shift is also reflected in the Warsaw Summit communiqué, which states that the challenges in the area are of strategic importance to the alliance and to the partners and require common approach. In the context of a deteriorating security environment, the EU is working towards a strategy to reinforce solidarity and European defense capabilities by joining national resources and capabilities in the form of a permanent structured cooperation. With more US engagement, European allies are preparing to share common responsibility to grow the transatlantic security partnership closer and become more productive. We are dedicated to the continuous process of further strengthening our cooperation with NATO and the EU, especially in the light of the dramatic changes in the Euro-Atlantic security environment, when principles of rule-based international order have been violated and the European security architecture has been strengthened. This process of strengthening Georgia-NATO and Georgia-EU partnerships is also highlighted in the NATO Warsaw Summit Communiqué 2016, as well as in the EU Global Strategy for the European Union's Foreign and Security Policy 2016. We are looking forward to the plans on enhancing Black Sea presence to be finalized in 2017 and look forward to be involved in the Black Sea security developments alongside NATO members, besides regular consultations and strategic discussions. We are willing to actively participate in 4 major areas: maritime component, land component, airspace monitoring, and informational sharing. We have already demonstrated our commitment and capability to contribute to Euro-Atlantic security by Georgia's contribution to the NATO-led operations, to the NATO response force, and EU-led operations too. We do believe that the rising threat of terrorism and the refugee crisis and all these kind of challenges can only be overcome by a common approach and united efforts. In order to oppose an increasingly unstable security environment in and around the Black Sea, we seek to contribute more to the efforts of the international community in projecting stability and protecting security in our own region, thereby further strengthening our contribution to the overall Euro-Atlantic security. Taking into consideration modern deterrence strategy that was elaborated on Warsaw Summit, MOD of Georgia leadership has initiated the examination of the entire defense sector, aiming to raise Georgia's contribution to overall Euro-Atlantic security and support Georgia's integration process and interoperability with NATO, also for the enhancement of our capacity for self-defense and resilience. We have developed a clear vision and detailed master plan for future reforms and optimization of Georgian armed forces. The new strategy defense review will reflect that vision and provide detailed information on how Georgian armed forces will be reshaped by 2020 to better prioritize our development and modernization efforts. These reforms will give us the opportunity to improve readiness of Georgian armed forces. The master plan is structured around 5 key lines of efforts: strategic direction and management, force optimization, force readiness, institutional foundation, and international and bilateral engagement to implement critical defense priorities for the next 4 years. One of the major directions of our reforms includes the reduction of the personnel costs in the defense budget. This will enable us to spend more on equipment and infrastructure modernization, as well as on force readiness. During the reforms, we especially rely on our friends and partners' support in further enhancing defense cooperation and overcoming the possible challenges in the acquisition of modern defense equipment and weapon systems. Having in mind the shared values and security interests across the Euro-Atlantic and wider European landscape, the responsibility for defending and advancing them should not and cannot be limited to NATO members only. There is a shared understanding among the alliance and its partners that new challenges cannot be overcome alone. And in order to survive and succeed, we have to stand for one on our values, be flexible and adaptable. We have to seek all the possible ways of cooperation, including additional reforms. We believe that if partners like Sweden and Georgia are to be interoperable to manage crises alongside with NATO tomorrow, they need to work with NATO on interoperability issues today, and in addition to that, they also need to work with each other to enhance their situational awareness and to develop common approaches to evolving challenges. These efforts can be carried out under the framework of NATO's Partnership Interoperability Initiative offering opportunities for cooperation to several states. NATO's engaged with enhanced opportunities partner individually, although this approach could be taken to another level by intensifying cooperation among the enhanced partners as well. A common challenge for all open, democratic and pluralistic societies is that we all are especially vulnerable to hybrid aggression, economic coercion, and military intimidation. This calls for jointly building resilience through merging capabilities and experience sharing among each other. To my mind, strong bilateral bonds and stable partnership could play a key role in effectively addressing the common challenges, and then I really look forward to deepening our cooperation and sharing our experience in the following spheres: promoting effective territorial defense based on total defense approach, developing successful reserve and mobilization system, promoting interagency cooperation, countering aggressive state-sponsored propaganda, developing cybersecurity capabilities. I believe that strengthening links and relationships between Georgia and Sweden, as with an enhanced opportunities partner through regular political consultations and shared situational awareness is crucial. This will help us to respond to common challenges and bolster our contribution to Euro-Atlantic security. Thank you very much for your attention.
Please stay. Thank you very much. Before we invite back Mr. Peter Hultqvist, I would like to ask a follow-up question. When it comes to the territories, Abkhazia and South Ossetia, and when you meet your colleagues in other European countries, do you feel that this is a situation that somehow has been forgotten by other European countries and by the EU perhaps in wake of other developments in Europe?
We have full support from European Union and for member of European Union states, and they support our territorial integrity and sovereignty, so it will be continued in future too. So we are stronger together in this direction, and we feel full support from European Union and from states of European Union in this direction.
And when it comes to membership of the European Union, could you say something about that? Are we looking several years into the future in this particular area?
Why is it important for us to be member of European Union? Because it is important for our dignity, for our self-realization, but we see this process as self-realization for our nation and towards to reform in democratic field, towards to protection of human rights, towards to establishment of institutions, the independent institutions, which creates a solid foundation for dignity, for independence, and for development for our citizens and for our country. That's why we try to be a member of European Union, but for us it's important to do a lot of, and we aim to establish independent state institutions, to establish rule of law, and with that way we will have such ambition to be in future member of European Union.
Thank you for that. Welcome back, Mr. Peter Hultqvist. And we will open up for a general Q&A. So if you have a question, please raise your hand or note it there. And a microphone will be provided to you. But I will start with Mr. Hultqvist. When it comes to the Swedish defense reform, what do you think that Georgia can learn from that? The do's and the don'ts, perhaps.
I think we have the same ambition to develop national defense perspective. That's a main and ground platform for our discussions. And if we meet in that level, I think we can then have a lot to learn from each other. Conscription is one thing that are up on the agenda in Sweden, and that's also something that are up on the agenda in Georgia. To build long-term working systems that are sustainable in the defense forces is also something that we can work together around. And I think also there is an interest in Georgia for total defense. And we have a journey to do here in Sweden around total defense, but we also have experience from the past. And we also in the Nordic environment have a lot of experience around total defense. So I think there are many questions. Cyber and hybrid is also something that the minister have talked about here.
Minister Soria, when it comes to the Swedish, we have made a long journey in Sweden when it comes to our defense, our armed forces, especially as when it comes to conscription versus professionalized armed forces, where we now are somewhat turning back to a conscription system. What do you think you can bring back to Georgia after this 2 days here in Stockholm?
Thank you. First of all, I want to explain why we decided to come to Sweden, because we are in same group to NATO, enhanced partnership groups, and it is our obligation to have bilateral communication among these countries, and especially with Sweden. We, of course, know and follow all of information and developments here, and we know about decision to reestablish conscript system here in Sweden. Same thing happens in Georgia too. It was abolished previous year, but after my decision it was reestablished again. Why? Because as Minister said and mentioned, our approach is same. We are small nations, which are facing same threat coming from Russia, and whole engagement of society and broad engagement from everyone is very important, and that's why total defense concept is for us high priority too, and we decided to share information in this regard and to learn more from your experience to create and to functioning system in that regard and to avoid some mistakes too. So we will continue.
I think one more question is also very important, that is to have the same platform of view about rule-based order and international law, and that's a very deep and a very important connection.
But as I understand, you will go back to a 100% conscription system, or do you going to have a hybrid system with both professional?
Hybrid system. Right. Of course, we will have professional system, and additional we will conscript system too.
Okay. I will take a question from the floor, please.
Some months ago, two neighboring countries of yours, Russia and Turkey, were almost close to war after the shooting of the Russian plane over Syrian territory. Then, a couple of months later, after the failed coup d'etat in Turkey, we have observed a phenomenal rapprochement, cooperation between the two countries. One of the countries is a member of NATO, the other is Russia. Since you are in the middle, do you have any comment about the future of this cooperation, and can you see any short-term consequences of that? My name, by the way, is Dimitrios Karkamanis. I have a long-term, many years I've been working with the Swedish Armed Forces, the Swedish Defense Research Establishment, the defense staff, and the Air Force staff.
Mm-hmm. So, regarding Russia, I mentioned that major threat what we are facing today is threat coming from Russia. You know that Russia's military contingent is presented in our territory. This territory is occupied by Russia, and there are about 10,000 Russian soldiers on the ground. Regarding Turkey, Turkey is our partner state, strategic partner, NATO member state, which supports our sovereignty and territorial integrity. We have very good bilateral and trilateral cooperation with Turkey, with Azerbaijan together. We launched several military exercises together, and we have planned to continue such dynamic in future too. So Turkey supports Georgia's NATO membership aspiration, and we have full support from Turkey.
A question for the both of you. How do you think that this Swedish-Georgian partnership will evolve over time? Minister Hultqvist mentioned that we have, for example, Swedish mountain training and also some engineers in Georgia. When will we have Georgian troops in Sweden then training on our soil, for example? That's for both of you.
Please.
Yes, and now we also have a person that will work inside the NATO Joint Training and Evaluation Center in Georgia from the Swedish Defense Forces. So that's a new step we take just now. And I think also that this discussion that we have had today is a platform for cooperation in the future. And there is some topics that we can find platform for this discussion. It's about cyber, it's about hybrid, but we have also to see more how to develop this in the future and how we will do. And I can also say that I have been today invited to visit Georgia and continue these discussions, and I have accepted that. And I also see that as a way to show solidarity with Georgia and also solidarity with the Georgian right to decide about their future by themselves and also make their own choices around security questions and strategy. So I think that we have a lot to do together. And I will also say that we are in the Enhanced Opportunity Program, both of us. So there we also have a platform. I can also see that this is something that are more than Sweden, because this trip started in Helsinki yesterday. And Finland is one of our closest and deepest partners from the Swedish side. And Finland will also soon start a hybrid center. And the minister from Georgia will also visit Estonia. And Estonia, they have the cyber center, and we have participated in that. And we also have Estonia as a close partner. So we build a network together, states that have equal values, and think that international law is very important to follow and respect.
Minister Soria, will you come?
Yes, this is first visit, official visit to the Europe from my side, and especially we decided to visit Finland, Sweden, and Estonia because we want to deepen our cooperation and strengthen our cooperation with Nordic and Baltic countries, because threat coming from Russia in Baltic and Nordic countries and in Black Sea region is the same. That's why we must find common approach to do more for self-defense and to find more common solutions in that direction. I want to use opportunity to express my gratitude for contribution of Swedish side. You have 22 persons there on our ground in Georgia, the European monitoring mission. It is very important for us because it is only one mechanism, international mechanism, which keeps peace on the ground, on the so-called occupied line. Thank you again. So we have very good experience, and as Minister said, one of the experts will send to JTEC, to joint training at center in Tbilisi. So we will continue and deepen our relationship in the future.
Thank you. We have a question over there. Please present yourself first.
Yes, of course. My name is Per Ekman from Uppsala University. First of all, welcome to Stockholm, Mr. Soria. I have a question to you. Besides the already mentioned occupation of Georgian territory, from your perspective, what would you consider to be the most significant challenges from Russia facing Georgia at the moment? Thank you.
So our decision is that we try only peaceful to develop ourselves, to develop democratic institutions, and to be attractive for Abkhazians and Ossetians, that we are more developed with these institutions. And this is, of course, challenges for Russia too, because they have not such institutions. We are well developed in that direction. And what I mentioned, we need this for our citizens, for our society to have dignity, to protect human rights. And when Abkhazians and Ossetians see that our country is more developed with these institutions, this will be a big challenge for Russia. So only way to find some solutions from Georgian side is peaceful solutions, and we will continue in this path.
Mr. Hultqvist, when it comes to Russia and the situation in Georgia, what do you tell your counterparts if and when you meet them? Because we had the same situation. We had the Crimea and
from the Swedish side, I never talk about threats. That's the first thing I will say. I talk, and my government talk about things that real happens. Annexation of Crimea. You have occupation in these two parts of Georgia. You have more of tension in the Baltic Sea region. So that's realities we are talking about. We see more of exercises in Russia. We see more of investment in new bases areas and the opening up of old bases from the Soviet era. We also see more of, from time to time, negative rhetoric about nuclear weapons and so on. So it's all this scenario we are looking into, and that's also the reason why we are upgrading our military capabilities. We also deepening our cooperation with other countries on the bilateral and multilateral level, and we also try to develop our work in enhanced opportunity program in NATO partnership. And we do this very openly also as some sort of signal to the world around us that we understand the environment. So that is what we are doing, and this is not news.
No, of course not. Mrs. Saria, as Defense Minister Hultqvist said, we have an increased Russian exercise pattern over the Baltic, both on the Baltic Sea and in the air. Is that something that you experience also in Georgia when it comes to your surroundings? Is it a massive increase, or?
Yes, after 2008, they increased not only presence, they conducted several exercises in occupied territories, which raised big concern for us, and it violates international order, it violates ceasefire agreement, and it is big concern for us.
Thank you. I think we have a question down there.
Bakr Fattah, Ambassador of Iraq. Thank you very much it was very interesting, the presentations. But as you mentioned that now in the whole of the area, we have the hybrid warfare, and we have the hybrid instruments for face such kind of the war. I would like to see what you mean by the hybrid instrument and which kind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do you would like to comment on that?
I think that hybrid warfare has always existed. I think it's tools that have been used in every war and before every war and also in peacetime. But it have come up to the surface in its more modern form since the annexation of Crimea and things that happened before that operation. So I think we are now in some sort of development phase that we see that this is something again that we need to handle on the international arena, and because of that, different countries now will upgrade their knowledge about methods and also see what they can do in this arena. And I see that the Finnish Hybrid Center is a result of that development, and I will also say that Sweden, we will join that center.
Minister Soria, you mentioned hybrid warfare in your speech. Could you elaborate a bit on your experience about when it comes to hybrid warfare?
So, for example, state-sponsored propaganda, one of the examples for hybrid warfare, and in which way we try to respond to state-sponsored propaganda. We are open society, democracy, and we try to give truth, information, facts, arguments, and all of active citizens, and in special politicians, must be very actively involved to show this truth to society. So it is one of the examples for that.
Thank you very much. I think we have a question down there.
Yes, Jaime Ortega, Republic of Panama, Embassy of Panama. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting. My question is rather direct, and it concerns your views on NATO. Given the change of administration this past Friday in the United States, given what I guess everybody here heard during the campaign, words that were echoed by the new president of the United States, NATO was mentioned several times. And also given the apparent contradictions regarding NATO spoken by General Mattis, who has been named the new Secretary of State, and his boss, President Trump, how do you see, and I know it's very early on, but what is your feeling as to the United States, if you will, approach to the North Atlantic Organization Treaty? Thank you.
And the question is for the Georgian Defense Minister?
For both of them.
Oh, for both of them, okay.
Because I think both are in the same boat, to a certain extent.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
So, in Swedish defense strategy, I can read, security is built in solidarity with others. When we spoke about rule-based order, it means that rules must be protected. And NATO's function is to protect values, what we share, to protect rule-based order. That's why we see future only in this solidarity. Only to strengthen this relationship in framework of NATO or with NATO partner countries, which are part of rule-based order, can be created solidarity and security in the world.
Yes, I think that during the election campaign there has been created a lot of questions from other parts in the world when they see what have been said during the election campaign in the United States. And because of that, now many people around in the world and many countries wait for some sort of declaration, some sort of answers. And I have read about that General Mattis, defense minister, and Stoltenberg, Jens Stoltenberg, NATO secretary, have met now. And there was also, what I think, a message there about NATO is an important organization. NATO is important for stability. And the view was that United States will uphold what they have started before. And I say that we have to wait and see what this new administration will deliver. And from my point of view, I only can say that we have a statement of intent for the United States, and we will going on working with that statement and the context in that statement. And so I will not speculate around the changes and about new situations. I handle that sort of situation if they come. And I think that that could be a constructive way to meet the situation. But I think NATO is important for the stability in Europe. The transatlantic link is important for the stability in Europe and in our part of the world. It's very important to uphold the sanctions towards Russia. It's necessary also to work with this value-based international order and respect international law. That's very important. And if we go from that way, I think we have very, very big problems. And it's not an acceptable development if we say that so-called great powers have the right to have their own backyard. That's totally unacceptable. So we will wait and see. But I can also say that the signals from General Mattis is something that I think is interesting to follow. And what I've seen from him until now, it's nothing that I am worried about. But there is a lot of questions, and I think there is a lot of job to do on this level the coming months. And yes, that is what I have to say. Thank you.
But Minister Isoria, don't you think that we live in a bit more uncertain times when it comes to the question of sanctions against Russia? I mean, there are leaders and countries that start to perhaps think in new ways in that particular aspect, but also about the credibility of NATO. Partly due to the new U.S. president, or do you think that both NATO and sanctions, that's as clear today as it was, let's say, 2 or 3 years ago?
So uncertainty you will have in the country or in the state in which not rules decides, persons decides rather than rules and norms and international orders. That's why I often mention that rule-based order, to protect such order, is very important. Only in this order you can have feeling of security and and in other situation, in other autocratic regimes, you have not such feeling and you have uncertainty. That's why violation of such order is big concern for all of us, and we must do everything to protect such order with our solidarity, with a strengthening of NATO and with strengthening partners of NATO. And my visit here is one of the signals for that, to enhance partnership among partners to NATO too.
Thank you. When it comes, I started out asking about the European Union and the Georgian aspiration of joining the European Union. But I would also like to ask Minister Hultqvist, when it comes to European Union and the EU defense and security cooperation, what role can EU play in bringing more security and stability? In part, for example, in the Black Sea area, in this particular case, And to you, Minister Isoria, does a closer European defense and security cooperation, does it benefit Georgia? Will it make Georgia a safer country, basically? So, Minister Hultqvist.
I think that European Union can do a lot together with NATO around cyber and hybrid warfare. I think that can be a team for working together. And I think also that European Union can do more for supporting existing European Union missions in a more effective way in the future, and that we can build a more effective organization for that. I think also that European Union can do a lot in this mission that you mentioned. So I think that European Union have a role to play, but there must be a difference between NATO and European Union. We should not overlap each other, and we should not create a European army or air force or that sort of organization. We should not have any European Union headquarters and build a new military bureaucracy in Brussels. We should have this NATO have their position, European Union have their, we can cooperate in some areas, and we can also build a more effective organization. And from the Swedish point of view, we see the question of defense as a national responsibility for each country, as a platform for our cooperation inside European Union and in other organizations.
Yes, I will continue this, that for us it's very important to increase our self-defense. For that reason, we will start this year Georgian Defense Readiness Program with the United States of America. For that reason, we mobilized some finances, and US are ready with FMF budget to invest more on infrastructure, on training capabilities, and for acquisition of equipment. So for us, important is to have self-defense capabilities and resilience, and it is envisaged in global strategy that neighboring countries must be strong, must be resilience of state and society, and we are now one of the best country which contributes a lot to international security in Afghanistan. We are second contributor there on the ground. We are contributing to EU-led missions too. In 3 days, we will send one platoon to Central Africa. So we are part for global security, and we are contributing to that security.
And as I understand it, when you signed the association agreement with the EU, you also signed an agreement governing your involvement in EU crisis management operations. Are we talking the civilian part of the crisis management or military?
Yes, we...
Or both, perhaps?
Both. So in such situation, as I mentioned, we are ready to be part of this. And as I mentioned, we took some steps in this regard, and in the future, we will continue in this direction.
We are, thank you. We are running out of time. I have a final question for both of you. When it comes to the Swedish-Georgian defense relationship or cooperation, what other areas then, you mentioned it a bit before, Mr. Hultqvist, what other areas than what we're doing right now could you see yourself working together in a couple of years' time, perhaps?
So Sweden is very active in Georgia. We have your foundation there, and SIDA is very active in several directions, and establishment of independent institutions is very important for us, and in this regard, your activity is very welcome. And again, I want to express our gratitude for that. So Sweden is, now we will start cooperation in defense field, but in several fields, in cultural, educational, and development of democracy. In such areas, Sweden is very, very active in Georgia.
Minister Hultqvist?
I have nothing to add to that. But what I can see on the defense area, the question of cooperating, I think a lot is around information sharing and experience sharing.
Yes.
And it can be about how to build territorial defense, experience around conscription system, mobilization system,
Yes. Reserve system.
and how to counter against propaganda and different sort of psychological operations.
Yes.
I think that cyber experience also can be an area. And I see this in a context also where other countries can be involved. So not only Swedish, Georgian perspective, it can also be a Nordic perspective in this. But we have to come back to that later on. Thank you.
Let's meet in here, yes. Defense Minister Levan Isoria and Defense Minister Peter Hultqvist, thank you very much. A warm hand.
Thank you.
So this seminar is over. Have a great day and see you soon again.
We are
Thank you.
going to have press here.